Do you ever feel like you've disappointed your younger self? Like all the dreams, goals, and ideas you had have collected dust? For some of them, no matter how much time has passed, they still linger in the back of your mind. When you see others achieve what you wanted to achieve, or when you lay your head down to sleep at night, you can't help but think, what if? We're often told to just start or just do it. But as soon as we start moving, our fears and self-protective thoughts tend to stop us in our tracks. Confession: I've been afraid to start for years. I procrastinated and prioritized other things and delayed what I truly wanted to do. Even when I didn't think I was afraid to start, I convinced myself that I just didn't have enough time, or that I couldn't start until I had a fully detailed plan. I've been afraid of burning out again. I've been afraid of disappointing myself. I've been afraid to be vulnerable and put myself out there. The thoughts of what family, friends, or strangers would think held more weight than what I think and feel. I was a prisoner of my own fear for over 4 years, and I lived life with one foot on the gas and the other on the brakes. Just a few months back, I came across a journal entry from February 11th, 2021 that reads, I just read some of my journal entries from 2019 and early 2020, and I let my past self down. I feel like I'm still in the same exact place, but I'm even worse off than before. I want better for myself, but I find it hard to move forward. I feel like I'm trapped in the mess that I created. I feel stuck in the divide between what I am and what I'm capable of. But all of those fears really don't add up to the pain I feel as living as this version of myself. Uninspired, letting people down, dreams, aspirations, consistently self-sabotaged and stagnant. It just doesn't feel good. Maybe you can relate to this, feeling like you're caught in a mental tug of war between your ambitions and fears. You have this burning desire to just do it and actually take consistent action towards your dreams, goals, and ideas. However, like clockwork, those what if I fail, or what if I'm not capable, or what would others say about me thoughts start bubbling up to the surface. I realized that if I didn't do something, I was going to keep living in that same time loop of fear, self-sabotage, inconsistency, and stagnancy. And after doing that for 4 years, I just couldn't imagine another 5, 10, or 20 years of deferred dreams. So take a look in the mirror and get radically honest with yourself. If you feel like deep inside you, it's time that you stop stalling on your journey and actually make meaningful and lasting progress towards the things that matter most to you. Come with me, and I will take you through these 6 questions and perspectives that help me make more progress in the past couple of months than I feel like I have in the last 4 years. How many of us have found ourselves clinging to what we know simply because it feels safer, more comfortable, and more predictable than pursuing the dreams, goals, and ideas that we truly want to? For me, this looked like sticking with the pre-med route way longer than I should have, because although grueling, it was predictable and secure. I basically had a rough idea of what my life would look like for the next 10 to 15 years. So, I shoved down the butterflies in my stomach and the soft yet persistent whispers in my spirit telling me that this wasn't the path meant for me. But what if instead of enduring unhappiness, we choose to embrace uncertainty? Uncertainty has gotten a bad rap. We see it as this daunting, treacherous road where danger lurks at every turn, when instead, it possesses a beauty of its own. For me, truly embracing uncertainty looked like packing all my MCAT books up and dropping them off with an organization, as well as unsubscribing to all of my med school related emails and sending thank you messages to all my recommenders and those that supported me along this journey. Now, I won't lie, it feels super weird to go from this safe and predictable life for the next decade and transition into an era where I don't even know how the end of the year will look for me. But over the months that I've been making this mental and now physical transition, I've felt more peace, momentum, and excitement than I have in years. Uncertainty presents us with a vast buffet of choices. It opens up a world of infinite possibilities. Embracing uncertainty grants us the freedom and flexibility to carve our own unique paths. So, don't continue to stay in spaces where you feel unfulfilled or where you know you should have closed a chapter a long time ago. Now, you may have heard that and thought some form of can't. And I get it. That's what I thought when I was in the middle of my pre-med journey. And that's also what I thought when I wanted to take a 3-month trip to Portugal as sort of a mini sabbatical. Now, in my case, considering the visa application timeline and considering that my finances weren't all together, I definitely couldn't have just packed up and, went to Portugal in a day. But with intention and with 6 to 9 months of saving, I definitely could have made it happen. I stopped myself and I just told myself that it's not possible. There's just so much we can do when we give ourselves the power to understand that we are the driver's seat. We're the ones that are able to direct our lives and where they go. And oftentimes we find that we're actually in the passenger seat and societal expectations are in the driver's seat, or what family and friends want you to do are in the driver's seat. There are times in our lives where we have to realize that we have to get back in the driver's seat of our lives. So, the next time you catch yourself saying, I can't, when faced with something, take a moment to pause and be honest with yourself. Ask, is it really that I can't do it? Or is it more about not wanting to do it, being scared, finding it difficult, or upholding society's mostly made-up rules? The realization that a lot of my can'ts were bound by societal expectations and made-up timelines really freed me from continuing to delay the things I truly wanted to do, like this YouTube channel. So, I challenge you to challenge the narrative of can't and reclaim ownership over your life. Now, I know this sounds super corny, but if you can, put your hand on your heart, close your eyes for a few seconds, and take a moment to breathe and be still. Deeply embrace the truth that you have the power to shape your life and create the outcomes and experiences you desire. Visualize what it feels like to put yourself back in the driver's seat. Pause this video for a minute if you have to. Now, one reason we often convince ourselves that we can't do something is because we keep waiting for this perfect time to come along. Although I spent this time doing some planning and ideation, my main excuse was I didn't have enough time to work on it. Between working over 40 hours a week full time, working on my medical school applications, and being in graduate school for part of that time window, as well as plenty of other obligations, I was way overbooked. I realized through failing at trying to balance it all that the right time obviously isn't going to fall in my lap. I'm going to have to get off autopilot and create it. Creating the right time for yourself boils down to 3 simple steps, in no particular order. The right time equals ruthless prioritization, plus better boundaries, plus creativity. Ruthless prioritization for me looked like making some tough decisions, like closing the chapter on my pre-med and grad school journeys, which had been consuming an overwhelming amount of time, physical energy, and mental energy each week. I also decided to put certain goals on hold until later this year, or even the next, so I could be focused with the few hours a week I do have. I'm gonna be honest with y'all. This part was one of the most difficult parts because as someone who considers herself multi-passionate and as someone who can be a bit indecisive at times, I had a difficult time with this. But I opened myself up to this perspective, and I want all of us to open ourselves up to the perspective that prioritization isn't restrictive. Prioritization allows us to make actually meaningful progress in the things that matter most to us in this season of our lives. And I want us to also open up to the perspective of our lives having seasons. And not seasons just based on what the calendar tells you. Because I know when we think of seasons, we think, oh, what are our 1-year goals? Or what are our quarterly goals? And we're kind of restricted to these 3-month blocks or these 1-year blocks. But I want us to be more flexible and fluid and be open to what life is telling you. Or think about like the seasons of a TV show. Some of them are 12 episodes, some of them are 24 episodes, some of them are 8 episodes. Or the chapters of a book. Some books are like 50 chapters and some books are only like 10 chapters. What is this season of this life asking of you? Really take some time to think about that and tune into that. And that also can help you on your journey of figuring out what to prioritize now and what to put on the shelf for later. And what I love about the shelf is that it's not gone. It's not saying that we'll never do it again. It allows us to know, okay, we're still there, but it allows us to know that we've accounted for it so that we can have all our focus on what we need to focus on in this season. If you're finding it difficult to prioritize, I got you. Here are 3 questions that you can either reflect on, you can talk through, or you can meditate on that helped me figure out what I need to focus on in this period of my life versus in later seasons of my life. When I answer these questions myself, my list narrowed down to only 3 things. I won't lie, I may have another confession for y'all. I am that girl with her phone always on Do Not Disturb. And in this season, setting better boundaries looks like even stricter Do Not Disturb settings after 9 o'clock. And what this allowed me to do is to show up with more energy, with more clarity on the days that I'm off of work so that I can work on my channel and I can work in my organization and building my second brain without feeling like super sluggish and tired and like I needed 10 naps or I just couldn't focus on what I was doing. Embracing creativity looked like building a realistic 15 to 20 minutes into my morning routine to get things done for my channel, instead of feeling frustrated that I had no time to do things after my 12-hour shifts. So I want you to genuinely ask yourself this. What things do you need to cut out completely or just set on the shelf until later? In what ways can you set better boundaries with yourself and with others to safeguard your precious time and energy? And how can you be more creative with the time and the resources that you already have? So, it's time to make a decision. Will you continue to live life on autopilot and spend more weeks, months, or years waiting for things to somehow align? Or are you going to create your own right time? Now, although starting and recommitting to our dreams, goals, and habits does require creating our own perfect time, it does not require creating the perfect plan. I repeat, it does not require creating the perfect, most detailed, well thought out, thorough plan. I used to be afraid to start because I got so wound up on how exactly I would get from point A to point Z. I was always, and I mean always, in search of more. I wanted more information, I wanted more confirmation, I wanted more resources, more time, more tools, a better plan, more. I kid you not, this is basically live footage of me obsessing over what I would do hypothetically when I got to step 100 before I even made it to step 2. This is also me creating a super detailed 26-page plan. Yes, I said 26 pages. For my 12-week year last July. It took me over a week to just plan it. And guess what? I ended up getting super overwhelmed and barely accomplishing anything. More often than not, our obsession with getting this crystal clear, bigger picture at the start really only leaves us turning in circles at the starting line. And at least for me, it's only served to amplify my fear and my anxiety. A few months back, I was working on a Sudoku puzzle on a flight when I thought of something. What if I just took the next step and approached life like a game of Sudoku? In Sudoku, you're given a set of numbers to start the board. You have to use those default numbers to figure out the next few numbers on the board. There's no foolproof formula or strict roadmap to follow. Instead, you've got to embrace experimentation and trial and error, allowing each move to guide you closer to the solution. Progress in this puzzle is made step by step, with each number unlocking clues to figuring out the next number. Playing Sudoku has actually taught me 3 lessons about the importance of abandoning the perfect plan. Lesson number 1. Put your blinders on. The fact that each number or set of numbers gives clues on how to approach the next empty box is a reminder for us to develop tunnel vision and genuinely take things one step at a time. I found that my fear and overwhelm drastically decrease when I think to myself, just take the next step, and laser focus on whatever that next step is. I literally actively block all thoughts of anything past that. I've also found that the bigger picture and the how I used to spend ages obsessing over start to fall in place more gracefully than when I was forcing and trying to plan out every little detail at the starting line. Lesson number 2. Fully maximize what you have available to you right now, instead of waiting for the perfect resources or the perfect circumstances. Think of the default set of numbers on a Sudoku board as your current skill set, network, knowledge, access to resources, time, etc. Using the default set of numbers is the only way to make progress in this puzzle. This is a reminder to fully lean into what you already have going for you, instead of waiting around for these perfect resources and the perfect circumstances and the perfect plan. Take it from me, the person who basically wrote 26 pages for a simple 12-week year. It is a waste of your precious time and energy. So think about the time, resources, skills, knowledge, networks, and support systems that you already have, no matter how small or how insignificant they may seem. And think about how you could maximize them. And in turn, maximize your progress. For me, this looks like using my iPhone to film instead of waiting until I get a professional camera. And this looks like sourcing old things that I had lying around to create a set instead of waiting for a larger room or a more aesthetic environment. It also looks like maximizing the 15 to 20 minutes I have in the mornings on the days that I work to brainstorm, write scripts, create thumbnails, or film. So for lesson number 3, I'm gonna need my recovering perfectionists, my overthinkers, and my type A folks. I'm gonna need you guys to come a little bit closer. Trial and error is unavoidable. And yes, I said error is unavoidable. Let that sink in a little. Because life is life, things will not always go according to plan. No matter how cute, no matter how organized, or no matter how detailed that plan is. That's why it's important to fully lean into being flexible and adaptable. Be willing to experiment, try a different angle, look at things from a different perspective. As you can see in these images of previous Sudoku puzzles I've solved, solving the puzzle can get pretty messy. It requires looking at things from different perspectives, marking my observations and being patient, and changing course at times. Without embracing the messiness, we risk not being able to solve the puzzle. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to abandon plans completely. There's definitely a place for plans. But personally, I found that creating super detailed plans often just leads to overwhelm and me feeling boxed into one singular way of doing things. I feel like for me, I found more peace and actual progress when I create like a rough draft overarching plan, but only get more detailed in the next 1 to 3 steps ahead of me. This allows me to be adaptable and flexible, especially when learning something new, because I feel like one thing we don't do enough is give ourselves the true permission to be a beginner at something. And that means that you're likely going to mess up. That means that you're not going to fully understand what something takes until you actually do it. So only being detailed in the next 1 to 3 steps allows me to make the adjustments necessary without feeling like if I change one thing or if I shift the plan in one way, it ruins step 30 that I was supposed to do 3 months from now. And that's how I used to do my plans. I used to be super, super specific about what's next, and then this, and then this, and this. And in this week, these 5 deliverables need to be done. And then I would find that as I learn and as I grow and as things change, I'm like, oh my God, like how am I going to fix what I just made? And if I fix this, that means that I ruin 30 steps down the line. I felt like it was like hitting a domino. So it was hard transition, again, as someone who is very type A, to be a little bit more relaxed. But honestly, it's been a lot more peaceful. And it's been so progress inducing and so beneficial to be able to learn and like allow space to learn, allow space to grow, allow space for actual progress that's based on life. Because a lot of times when we create these plans from our head, we're creating these plans from this idea that everything is going to be perfect, that we're going to feel good every day, that there's going to be no interruptions in our lives, that we're not going to learn new information that needs to change things along the line. So I invite you, if you're anything like me, to create a little bullet point rough draft plan. And then only get a little bit more detailed and a little bit more specific when we're talking about the next 1 to 3 steps. Or maybe if you want to do it in a time way, maybe only be more specific in the next 2 weeks or the next month. Whatever makes you feel comfortable and whatever makes you feel like you have enough specificity, but not too much that it would be overwhelming to change things up if necessary. All right, so I genuinely want you to pause, sit in this feeling, and ask yourself, how would it feel to let go of the pressure to have the perfect plan and simply just commit to the next few steps? Now, as you start taking the next steps, you may hear a familiar voice popping up telling you of all the reasons why you aren't qualified. I know that was the case for me. I sat on the sidelines for years because I convinced myself that I wasn't disciplined. I wasn't focused, I wasn't creative, I wasn't a good writer, I wasn't qualified, I wasn't smart, I wasn't organized. The list could go on and on. In my mind, it was all or nothing. Now, I know this is going to sound a little silly, but hear me out. Recently, I've found more power and more progress in the question of what if I become a musclehead? And through this question, I've learned to view nearly everything, and I mean everything, as a muscle that I can train to eventually increase my strength and my capabilities. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we go to the gym, the options aren't deadlift 400 pounds right now or get out. If our goal is to eventually deadlift 400 pounds, we have the freedom and flexibility to train the relevant muscles to build the strength to eventually complete the lift. We would also start deadlifting at lower weights or intensities until we gradually built our way up to 400 pounds. As a science and technology student for most of my life, I was stuck in the identity of believing that I wasn't a creative person. I didn't fully notice it initially, but the thought lingered in the back of my mind and affected the way I showed up when I wanted to start my blog back in 2018, choreograph dance routines, write, and even create this YouTube channel. So by looking at my creativity from the lens of an atrophied muscle, I developed my own training regimen to help build my creativity. Now, this does not mean I'm about to start doing whistle notes like Mariah Carey, but I do notice that this perspective changes my attitude and my energy when I'm faced with things that are challenging, or when I'm faced with things where my skill level is like down here. I notice that instead of fighting for all the reasons that I can't do something, instead, I'm fighting for all the reasons that I can. So, instead of believing you can't start because you don't have certain character traits or skills, embrace being a musclehead. Build a training regimen to improve your strength and capability. Focus on getting in your reps with intentional practice, and take action on a smaller scale and gradually build up. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You've probably heard this question hundreds of times as you started to work on or think about making progress towards those dreams, goals, visions, ideas, and habits. What if I fail? And to that I say, what are we truly afraid of? Most of the time, we just attribute it to a fear of failure, but more often than not, it's not failure itself that we fear. It's the aftermath and the consequences that we believe come with it. All right, so one of my journal entries from June 4th, 2022 is a perfect example of this. I wrote, I'm even scared to make the declaration that I'm going to write every day for the next 2 weeks that I'm in Houston, because I don't want to commit to something and fail. And when I originally wrote that, I just kind of wrote it off as like, this is this fear of failure that's coming back up. But in truth, it wasn't really a fear of failure. When I peeled back the layers, I realized it was a fear of disappointing myself again. And guess what? That fear led me to subconsciously avoid taking actions that could result in me letting myself down again. And that only further contributes to the cycle of perfectionism, procrastination, self-sabotage, and inconsistency. So in truth, I didn't really have a failure issue. I had a bigger, more glaring issue of self-trust. And no amount of time management tips, productivity advice, and perfectly laid out plans was going to fix that. Fortunately, it took me about a good 9 months after writing that journal entry to realize that if I wanted to make meaningful and lasting progress, what I really needed to do was rebuild the relationship with myself to one that was based on trust. And in doing so, build that belief that I follow through on the things that I say I'm going to do. So if you find yourself stuck in that grip of fear of failure like I was, I want you to ask yourself this question. What if instead I approached my fear of failure with curiosity? Take some time to dig deep and uncover what truly has you moving with one foot on the gas and the other on the brakes. A question I personally like to ask myself when I notice myself feeling fearful or hesitant around anything is, what are you protecting me from? Perhaps you'll uncover a fear of visibility, or maybe the fear of burning out, or maybe even the fear of some sort of punishment. Once you figure out what exactly it is that's underneath the surface, think of a way to work towards healing it on a micro scale, every day or every week. If it may be unsafe to work through some of these thoughts on your own, I recommend enlisting a professional's help. My favorite way of rebuilding my self-trust these days is by documenting the times I kept the promises I made to myself, especially when it was difficult to do so. When I go back and read those entries, I genuinely get a huge boost of confidence. I can see all the times in the past when I followed through on what I said I would do. It's concrete evidence that I'm capable of keeping those promises, and it gives me the motivation to keep going. Honestly, sometimes I think, how ridiculous would it be when I'm 80 years old and I'm saying yeah, I could have done this and I could have done that and I could have done this, but I'm telling people that the reason why I didn't do those things was because I was scared or because I was a perfectionist. And it's I just can't imagine looking back at everything that I left in the drafts and wonder what could have been. Remember, this isn't your practice life. And if you don't take anything from this video, take these words. This is not your practice life. I want us to finally dust off those dreams, those goals, ideas, and visions, and give them a real start this time. And if those what if thoughts or those thoughts about what if this happens and what if that happens start to come back, I want you to come back to this video and go through some of these reflection questions. Or you can go to my first video and laugh at how horrible and cringy it was. But remember, I'm also starting from scratch. If that gives you any sort of encouragement, I'm starting from scratch as well. I have no experience with editing. The best I've got is Windows Movie Maker. And even with filming, even with taking pictures of my friends, I'm literally one of the last options when it comes to pictures. They look at me and they just know that their pictures are not going to turn out good. But I decided that I'd rather go for something and look back at my life and feel like I emptied the tank on my potential than regret holding back. Now, I want us all to take a deep breath and hold on to one thing that feels true for you in this moment. What is one reflection, action you can take as soon as this video is over? Now exhale and write that story you know deep inside that you were always meant to write. And to younger Faith, we are finally doing it. It's this is the closest, I feel like this is the closest I've ever been to actually doing something that I said I was going to do creatively. And it just feels kind of so crazy. It feels so crazy. But yeah, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. And this is weird. I'm sitting in this weird feeling. It literally feels weird. But hey, we're here. And I'm not complaining.